Morning, my name is Mark Brunton. I'm the Operations Section Chief for CAL Fire Incident Management Team 3, and we're at the CZU Lightning Complex, and we're going to go over the operational briefing for September 3rd. So overall, the fire's looking a lot better over the coming days, and we're continuing to look better. Right now, the most work is in the Butano Park area, the north part of the fire. That's where we have still a lot of heavy mop-up. We have control lines in. We've got hose lines pretty much throughout that entire area plumbed into the line, which means that they're there to do the mop-up in that heavy terrain, and it's tough terrain, heavy timber, heavy fuels in that area. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done. A lot of good work has been done, and we're trying to make that render that safe so that eventually we can finish our repopulation of that area. But it's going to take a few days of a lot of hard work. We've moved a lot of our crews up there, so we have a lot of personnel working that area very heavily. Moving down through the Highway 1 corridor, Highway 1 is now open, and so we're seeing a lot of traffic that's going through there. As a result, we are seeing some smokes from the road, and those are getting called in, and we're getting rid of those and extinguishing those as we receive the calls for service. But it's looking really good for the most part throughout there. There is still some work being done by the utility companies and by Caltrans, especially some of the hazard trees near the road. So some of the lanes are not two-way direction, they're down to one lane, but that'll be ongoing for a few days. South end of the fire continues to be mopped up rather well. The Highway 9 corridor is looking even better every day. We've got improved control lines in. We haven't really seen very much roll out the past couple days, but with the warming and drying temperatures that we're going to be seeing the next couple days, it is going to be to the point where we're going to see heat advisories. It's going to be very hot, very dry. We are seeing a change in our wind to a north-northwest wind. So with all that combined, we expect to see smokes popping up, and that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing into the future. And so our resources are ready. They're going in there, and when they get their calls for service, they're getting in there and taking care of those smokes that are popping up. Again, we're getting a lot more of those calls for service because of the repopulation, more people moving in those areas. In the Bonnie Doon area, again, a lot of hard work, still a lot of hard work to go. There's a ton of work to be done in there on so many levels, not only on the fire suppression elements as far as the mop-up and rendering the place safe, but also the utility companies are in there full force and trying to get everything back up to par so that we can repopulate that. And once we repopulate that, like the other areas around that are left in the Highway 9 corridor, people are going to see these smokes, and we encourage them to call in, but they should rest assured that really these things aren't situations where they're going to get up, go, and create a huge firestorm or anything of that nature or be life-threatening. It's just more of a nuisance type thing, and we're just finishing up the job, and it's going to be something that's going to come with days to come. Our air program's looking really good. We're flying copters. We did lose a couple copters back to the system as we reduced the size of our footprint on this fire, but we still have plenty of water dropping helicopters that we'll maintain for the coming days, and when we get the weather, we'll be flying those. They've been dropping every day around 75,000 to 100,000 gallons of water each day in support of our resources and hitting the hot spots. PG&E will be flying copters again today to set poles, so it's another day of that. So that's what you'll be seeing helicopter-wise and any flights that are going on. And with the better weather coming, you're going to see a lot more of them flying. So it's nothing to be concerned about. They're just out there doing their job in the support of extinguishing this fire.
Chief, Carolyn on Facebook says lots of people are talking about recreational fires. What are the rules right now?
So recreational fires, especially with the holiday weekend coming up, a recreational fire is basically your campfire or a cooking fire, something of that nature. As people go out and recreate, especially with the COVID, we see a lot more outdoor recreation than we've probably ever seen historically. So with that and people getting out and enjoying the outdoors, they also like to have their campfire or their cooking fire. And that's okay in certain areas where it's allowed. Certain areas you have to find out, especially if it's on any federal forest lands, that you require a campfire permit, so make sure you have your appropriate permit. Know what the rules and regulations are for that particular area, that particular park. Some have a ban because of the hot and dry weather. So if they have a ban, then please don't have any of those live fires. But if they do allow it, make sure that you do it the proper way and that when it's done, that's appropriately extinguished.
Chief, everyone around here, of course, loves the redwoods. And Darcy on Twitter wants to know, do we really need to space redwood trees with crowns 10 feet apart?
That's not necessarily the case, but in the health of a good forest, of any forest, your trees, you want to have spacing in there, and what that does is it allows the trees to reach their fullest growth. When you have what are called a dominant tree, they will take up the space, they will shade out the smaller trees and stunt their growth. So in a well-managed forest of any kind, regardless of redwood or otherwise, you go out and you take out the less dominant trees. That gives the more healthier trees and the more dominant trees room to grow, and it creates a healthier forest scenario. So in the redwoods, they tend to be a little bit more packed. What we see nowadays with our redwoods was not historically how it's ever been, or most of our forests. Historically, 100, 200, 500 years ago, the forests weren't as tightly packed as they once were because of the natural events such as fire, like we've seen here, which was a natural event, and it's kind of a cleaning of the forest. They were more spaced out, and we would not recognize the forest today that we saw in the past. So yes, so through management of your forests, proper management, you'll see that thinned out. But what we see today with the more crowded spacing of the trees, it's just it's how we see it today, and you won't have that spacing.
Chief, May on Facebook wants you to speak specifically about the Fall Creek unit.
So Fall Creek, that is in the state park. That was impacted by fire. It's an area that we have put we have fire control lines in. So what was good about that is the fact that as part of our strategic plan, we let the fire kind of back down or have a low intensity burn through that area because of the fuel types and so forth. We felt that was one that we could let burn as part of a process because we had the limited resources and such. So what is the silver lining, or the good thing about that, is it was like a very controlled burn. So for the health of that part of the forest, that part of the state park, is actually in the future you're going to see really good results of that, because it's taken out that underbrush, it's reduced that fire danger in there for any future fire danger, and it's actually created a very healthy forest in eliminating the competitive fuels and put nutrients back in the ground. So it's also going to be very good for those trees moving forward. Also, redwoods thrive on fire, and the intensity of fire that we had burned through there is actually the precise amount of fire that the redwoods need to thrive and continue to be a very healthy redwood forest.
So Chief, you've been here now for nearly 3 weeks, and you've had boots on the ground, including your own. How would you rate the defensible space among properties in Santa Cruz County?
I normally work in the foothills, so it's a very big deal for defensible space. We preach it, we enforce it. We see a lot of fire in the environment that I work in, so people are very cognizant about it. They're very almost too fanatical about it to a point, and almost to the point of peer pressure on their neighbors to make sure they have their defensible space. I would say, unfortunately, and no dig against the communities, but it isn't as prevalent here, and there's a lot of reasons people don't, because they feel that, well, I live in nature, I live in this area because I want to enjoy that, I like the privacy with having the trees and so forth. And I'm not saying that you have to eliminate all the trees, but by thinning the undergrowth, by thinning the trees and limbing those up, and there's proper ways of doing it, you're creating not only a healthy environment in the forest, but also defensible space. And unfortunately, what we ran into here is most people did not have defensible space, and as a result, many lost their homes because of that. Part of the reason we do defensible space is a situation like this, where you have an intense fire. We don't have the resources to put a fire engine at every house. It's not a possible thing. And so it gives us an opportunity to have the best possible chance of saving that structure. And when you don't have that defensible space, it just doesn't help us out at all. And there's times that we have to select to save a certain structure or a couple structures because they have defensible space, then we're going to choose those because it gives us the best fighting chance, versus one that does not have their defensible space. You have growth under the decks and on next to the house, and we just can't do anything to save it. So what I'd encourage moving forward, and a great lesson learned, and you'll see it when you go through the community, those houses that survived, they had great defensible space, is that do your defensible space, and moving forward, make sure you do that and it's enforced.